What's going on, guys? This is Aaron from Departures Capital, and we're here with Michael Saxon, CEO of Taat Global Alternatives. It's a pleasure to have you on, Michael. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Aaron. Pleasure to be here as well.
Yeah, for sure. So, let's set the scene a little bit. You spent 25 years working in the tobacco industry all over the world. Can you tell us a bit more about how that went?
Yeah, I started my career here in the U.S., working for Philip Morris USA in sales, and then had a great opportunity. I was in my mid late 20s to move to the international side of the business. I was initially based in Switzerland, but most of the work I was doing was helping modernize the commercial operations through what we defined as Central Europe. It's countries that were former Soviet states or part of the Soviet bloc and are now part of the EU. So countries like Poland, Czech, Hungary, and it went as far down as Turkey was kind of the focus areas for me. After that, I spent 5 years in Asia, 2 in Taiwan, and 3 later in Malaysia, and then came back to Europe to run Scandinavia. I returned to the U.S. in 2012 when I returned to Altria Group to lead their corporate venture platform. So it was an absolutely fun career. Made a lot of friends through that. Worked with a lot of great people, and I got the pleasure to experience a lot of different cultures during my time overseas.
That's exciting. And then here we are. So, out of all those international markets, which would you say was your most favorite or the most unique?
They all have a little different special place for me. I mean, my wife and I got married in Switzerland. We met our children in Taiwan, and really kind of became a family in Malaysia, and our kids started school in Scandinavia. So they all have little different special parts. It's hard to really distinguish. We get that question a lot. Probably the one is people always kind of push and say, "Hey, where would you move back to?" And I'd probably really welcome the chance to move back to Southeast Asia. Malaysia was a terrific place in terms of just the combination of cultures that exist in that country, and I think it's also because that's where we really truly became a family. So Malaysia is definitely a standout for us, but each country we have some special memories and dear friends in each of those countries.
That's wonderful. I also spent 3 years in Asia, so I mean that's something we can talk about later. But I know you started working with Philip Morris International Malaysia around 2002, which is right around the time they banned tobacco advertising. Was that especially difficult to navigate?
It's interesting having worked in a highly regulated consumer products category. Some kind of it's really interesting how the world looks at that. My lens on it is it forced the tobacco industry to innovate, and things that are very common today, like and digital has transformed the world, but things like one-to-one marketing, building consumer databases, engaging consumers at points where you can introduce the industry I came from. We were doing these things 15, 20 years ago, and so it's not new territory for us, but it definitely forced us to find new ways to introduce new brands to consumers and engage consumers to hopefully fall in love with your brand. So I looked at it from a lens of that, it really forced us as an industry to innovate. And at the end of the day, it's the landscape you're dealt, and you have to make the best of it. So and I think several of the countries we worked in, whether it was Taiwan, Malaysia, Central Europe, or Scandinavia, we were successful in each of those places, finding new ways to grow our business.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So specifically, what stood out about Tat? There's all kinds of tobacco alternative companies out there, things like vape, heat not burn, that kind of stuff. There have to have been something specific about Tat to incline you to choose them. So what was it?
No, it was, and it also the same reason I decided to take the helm, and was also a very similar reason why one of our major investors also invested in the company is when I stand back and I look at the landscape in the tobacco industry, and I'll give you a little backdrop here. I came back to the U.S. in 2012, and that was really at the height of the frenzy in the e-vapor space. And quite frankly, that was an innovation cycle big tobacco missed. And that's why you've seen since that time, most of the big tobacco companies have acquired at least one, if not more than one, companies in the e-vapor space. And when you really take a helicopter view and you look at innovation in the tobacco space, if you were to exclude heat not burn, which was a technology that the tobacco industries have been working on, gosh, at least 30 years. I was part of a team that launched the very first generation of that product called Accord. The companies call it IQOS today. But
Hmm.
we launched that in the late 90s in Walmart in the first generation. So that just gives you a little bit of a timetable of how long that product's been working on. But if you exclude that and you look at all the other innovation in this space, it's actually happened at either smaller companies or through entrepreneurs. The e-vapor space alone was invented by a pharmacist out of southern China, and that was one of the things that inspired me. Our founder Joe, this is his third venture in terms of a startup, and I was pretty excited when I met the team. And what I found really unique about Taat was, it's a product that doesn't force a huge change in the consumer's behavior, right? We look, feel, taste, and offer a lot of the same sensorial experiences that an adult smoker would get from a traditional tobacco product. So that leap you ask the customer to make is we think that leap is less of a burden than jumping to a completely new form factor than something they're not used to. So that was what was really intrigued me, was really this idea that, why not redesign the cigarette to look different, taste different, feel different. And that was one of the real attractions I had for about joining Taat.
Yeah, it's truly quite a unique product. So now let's shift a bit to your perspective on Taat in its current state. There's Taat Original, Smooth, and Menthol. How would you say each of those varieties fits into the current global tobacco market?
Well, those three products have been designed for the U.S. market. Um, the red product matches up against leading. The red and blue really line up against leading non-menthol products in the market, and then the menthol version lines up against one of the leading brands. So we've tried to find a taste profile that's very similar to what the average adult consumer is used to. I'm just back from Europe, and one of the things that I learned on that trip was we might have to make some slight modifications because the taste profile in Europe is a little bit different. Most consumer products, while they have a base formula, there are little adjustments they make for different markets around the world just based on taste preferences. Restaurants do it, other CPG companies do it, and we'll have to make the same modifications as we expand internationally to make sure the taste profile is aligned to that consumer. But the three we have today are really matched up against the mainstream brands that are out there, so that when someone tries a Taat, it is very close to the experience they're used to. It just doesn't have tobacco and it just doesn't have nicotine.
No, exactly. So, we've also been hearing about this V3 formulation of the Taat base material. Apparently, adult smokers like it better and it's more efficient to manufacture. Can you tell us why V3 is such a big deal?
Yeah, version 3 was a huge leap for us. When I first became an advisor for the company a couple years ago, the first products we had were, I describe it as very hemp forward. And that product was only going to be a niche product in my view. And it wasn't until we moved from version 1 to version 2 and the current version 3 that we finally got the taste profile to really resemble that of a traditional tobacco cigarette. And once we got there, then we realized really quickly that jump for the consumer and that hurdle was really less than it was before. And now you can see that even in some of the markets. When we launched this product in market like Ohio, and when it was just version 1 or 2, it was an interesting product. It attracted some consumers, but it wasn't really a product that appealed to the average adult smoker. And once we got to version 3, the product was really refined. We're not going to be a one product company. Our R&D teams are still at work, but we're really happy with where the current product sits. And we think our R&D pipeline is robust enough that as time goes on and once we've built scale through the current products we have, we're excited about some other products we'll be able to bring to market in the future.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk about those with you a little bit later. Are those benefits something that tend to be important to the big tobacco companies when it comes to things like intellectual property? I know you led Altria's venture arm, so I'm sure you have an idea of how relevant this kind of thing is to their operating strategy.
Yeah, I mean, protecting your IP, whether it be through patents or through trade secrets, is a really important strategy as a company grows. And the company's already done that. We've got 2 patents filed, and there's probably not a week that doesn't go by that I'm asking our attorneys for an update on where we are. But we're also reviewing a broader strategy around our IP and of how can we make sure we protect this landscape that we think we've defined, and we like to call ourselves a little bit of a category creator. And we'll be protecting that intellectual property more as we go forward. It's definitely an important strategy for us, and while we're still small, it is important that we protect this, and it really creates a moat for us and a first mover advantage in this space.
Definitely. So now we're currently in the last quarter of Taat's fiscal 2022. Looking forward to fiscal 2023, what would you say are the top 3 goals or milestones for the company under your leadership?
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that today on our earnings call. So I'll have to punt that question a little bit for our next call. But we've learned a lot in the last 3 months. And one of the first things that was important to me was put together a multi-year plan. And that hard work's been done. It's not completely finished. And we've worked with some leading data providers and some external consultants to help us with that. When I joined, we lacked the data to really analyze the entire U.S. market and determine where our priorities need to fit. So that hard work's been done, and we're now mapping out the rest of that. But we clearly know where we want to go now, and are now really focused on building the infrastructure around that so that we can go execute as we get into 2023.
That's exciting, Michael. Well, thank you so much for all that information, and it's been a pleasure to have you finally on the channel, since your new role as CEO. So I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting journey, and I look forward to covering it along the way.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron, for having us on today. We're just getting started, so we look forward to coming back and providing you updates on a regular basis. So thanks again for having us on the call today.
If you like these videos, kindly hit that subscribe button and the bell for notifications. Drop us a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. And finally, always remember, Departures Capital is for information, education, and entertainment purposes only. Don't buy or sell a stock because you heard it on here. Buy or sell a stock because you've done your research, you've done your thorough due diligence, and you're making your own personal investment decisions for yourself. This video is not financial advice. Furthermore, this video may or may not have been sponsored by the companies that we've profiled within this video, and we may or may not own shares of any of the profiled companies in this video. If you want to know the full disclosure details, check the description down below along with thoroughly reading our disclaimer. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video.